Ahmadinejad does come from a very fanatical, marginal, right-wing, radical political faction within Iran. So, we've had similar kinds of phenomenon in Europe. If Austrian neo-Nazi, right-wing politicians wins, or if the French, Jean Le Pen wins, Ahmadinejad has that quality about him. So, and he's not traveled. I mean, the very first trip he had outside of Iran, other than battlefield experience he had crossing the border into Iraq, was when he came to the United Nations during the General Assembly meeting last year.
That was the furthest trip he's ever made.
That's the furthest trip he's made. The first trip is made to the West, so
to New York City.
To New York City. So, so in many ways, he also doesn't know the world. He comes from sort of a hibernated, radical environment, and therefore his vocabulary, his tone are not diplomatic. And secondly, when he came to power, his movement has a lack of respect for professional diplomats in Iran. In a manner that you could say, well, when the Pentagon had a lack of respect for the CIA 3 years ago. And the reason for that is they believe that they had achieved nothing during the previous 2 years of negotiations. And when
it's diplomatic corps, that the Iranian diplomatic corps.
And since he came to power, as you know, he expelled 40 ambassadors and senior diplomats. So first of all, there is this kind of dismissal of the diplomatic corps. So he didn't ask their opinion. He doesn't believe in their protocols. He believes he ought to say what he believes. And a lot of what he said is you can find on any street corner in the Middle East. It's conspiracy theory. It's anger at U.S. policy. It's some absurd ideas, and mixed in with sort of preaching. There are some things that were surprising in the letter. I thought, for instance, unlike the communiques of Abu Musab Zarqawi or Bin Laden, this was clearly written not with a sort of a heavily Arabic language inside, quotations from the Quran. It was deliberately written for a broad audience. And I also think the audience was not the White House, really.
What was the audience?
The audience was the Arab street, was the Muslim street. Because what Ahmadinejad did is that, as I said, he expressed what you might hear at every street corner. He equated himself as an equal with the President of the United States. And this is appealing demagoguery, if you would. To the street. So his pictures are sold in Damascus and Beirut. He got
his portraits are sold on the street.
Portraits are sold on the street. He's become very popular, and he's when he went to Jakarta, Indonesia, right after writing this letter, he was very well received on university campuses. Hundreds of people went to a mosque where he gave a talk. He sort of reveled in the reaction of the street. This is popular sort of stance. And in some ways, it was a very clever move. It was a public relations, if you would, coup. It might be counterproductive in terms of not eliciting a response from Washington, not bringing about a breakthrough that Iran was hoping, angering, if you would, the Western countries, making more people believe that even if he's not crazy, he shouldn't be president. If he's not crazy, he's reckless. And also creating a lot of anger in Iran. There was a number of op-eds written in different newspapers seriously criticizing him. And even a number of senior clerics have very quietly questioned him, what authority do you have to preach Islam? You're not even a cleric. They've criticized him very quietly, even on his dismissal of the Holocaust. One senior cleric even said to some of his followers, we shouldn't be in the business of statistics. What does it matter if 6 million people have died or 100 people have died? What is it to you to be number counting and dismissing whether an event happened or not? So, there is, within Iran, there was even a lot of anger, but in the larger Arab world, and as I said, they don't have to live with Ahmadinejad. They could stand on the sidelines and applaud, somebody saying what they want to hear. But it was not as wanton as we'd like to think. And you have to recognize that ever since he's become president, Ahmadinejad, in struggle with the supreme leader, is trying to build a base of support.